The Utah Jazz have established a pretty clear pattern at this point. They play great regular season basketball, literally no one talks about them, and then they lose in the second round, rinse and repeat, do it again. That seems to be, to most people, what they are doing this season, because I have not seen a single person talk about the Utah Jazz as a contender, despite the fact that they have the best offense in the NBA and the number 3 net rating in the NBA. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the Utah Jazz. I have seen the Memphis Grizzlies listed as the dark horse in the West by pretty much everyone, and look, if you have the Suns and the Warriors over the Jazz, guess what? So do I. I think that it's pretty dang obvious those are the two teams we expect to see in the Western Conference Finals. But if I have to name my dark horse this year to get out of the West, I'm 100% choosing the Utah Jazz over the Memphis Grizzlies. I think this team has been a little bit underrated like they are every season, and I think their chances at making the finals are not as far-fetched as many people may believe, so let me tell you why. Now, when you talk about the Jazz this season, you have to start with their offense, and that may be a surprise to some people. I would assume if you did not follow the Utah Jazz closely so far this year, you would not have expected them to be the number 1 offense in the NBA, because they're usually known as more of a defensive-minded team, led by Rudy Gobert, and just to get it out of my system, Rudy Gobert is not the reason they lost in the playoffs last year. He was a deserving Defensive Player of the Year, his coach was an idiot, and the Clippers completely abused the Jazz's defensive scheme, which was not Rudy Gobert's fault. Anyway, this season Gobert has continued to be the best rim protector in the entire NBA, while also seriously increasing his offensive production across the board. He is averaging a career high in points with 16, career high in rebounds with 15, career high in field goal percentage, which leads the league at 71%, while also shooting 69% from the free throw line on 7 attempts a game. Meanwhile, this stat is not tracked, but I guarantee you that Rudy Gobert is the best screen setter in the league and averages the most screen assists if they were tracked. This man is a phenomenal screen setter, which is a slightly more difficult thing than you may think if you've never had to be a big man in a high school basketball game. Setting screens is slightly more complex than it may appear. I'm just saying. And Rudy Gobert is phenomenal as a screener and a roller to the basket. He is the best there is. No, he doesn't have a deep offensive bag. You're not going to see him shooting jumpers. But he is a very good offensive piece next to a whole bunch of shooters. And that is exactly what Utah's organization has surrounded Gobert and Donovan Mitchell with this season. Speaking of Mitchell, he is having a great season of his own. 26, 5, and 4 with 2 steals. He's shooting 45% from the field, and that number would probably be significantly higher if it wasn't dragged down by his three-pointers, because the man is shooting 34% from 3 on 10 attempts a game. And look, Donovan Mitchell is a decent three-point shooter. Like, when he gets the open 3, he's probably going to make it. He's a solid three-point shooter. However, he is not Steph Curry or Damian Lillard, and therefore should not be taking 10 3-point attempts a game. He's just not quite that dude. That's my one issue with him this year, aside from, well, something else that is a problem with a lot of the team we'll get to in a little bit. Donovan Mitchell just needs to chill out on the threes. If the dude took like 5 threes a game, his efficiency would probably be off the charts, because he's one of the best slashers and finishers and like crafty like floater guys in the entire NBA. He is so very good at getting to the basket. I really wish he got to the free throw line more too. He's an 88% free throw shooter, and I know he's a small guy, so it's a little harder for him to like draw that contact constantly in the paint, but this is a dude, he takes 4 free throw attempts a game right now. I would love to see Donovan Mitchell take like 6 or 7 free throws a game. Like, dude is just a great free throw shooter. He's a great all-around offensive player, and his chemistry with the rest of the team is just phenomenal. And when you look at the rest of these dudes, Bojan Bogdanovic, I definitely just said his name wrong, I'm sorry, but Bogdanovic has been fantastic. I believe I mentioned him in my power forwards video. Dude is the most underrated player in the league, possibly. He's given you 18 points on phenomenal efficiency across the board, and he just plays his role on offense perfectly. Mike Conley is still doing his thing. He's a very quiet dude, kind of a poor man's Chris Paul in a way, which is not an insult. He plays decent enough point guard defense despite being a very small player. He's averaging 14 points a game on solid efficiency, especially from 3, where he is shooting 42% on 6 attempts, and he's a decent playmaker. Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles come off the bench. They are both 6th Man of the Year candidates. Very good shooters, very good all-around offensive players. And Royce O'Neal rounds out the starting lineup as your perfect offensive role player. The dude does not take many shots, but when he does, he is money. 48% from the field, 40% from 3, 7 points a game. He doesn't need to score a ton, but if there is an open shot to take, he is the dude you want to get the ball to. He makes it every time. So, this team sounds beastly, and in some ways they are. Once again, they are 4th in the West, they have the number 3 net rating in the league, number 1 offense. They are a very good team, and their defense at first looks very, very good. It is 11th in the NBA. You might think, just looking at the stats, that that is enough to make this team a contender. However, the problem comes in with their perimeter defense. The Utah Jazz are a terrible perimeter defensive team. Donovan Mitchell is at best a slight negative on defense. Mike Conley is good against other point guards, but because of his size and his age, he is not a versatile defender. Bogdanovich, Clarkson, and Ingles, all 3 of them are clear negatives on the defensive end, and I've seen this narrative that Joe Ingles is a good defender. He's not. He makes good hustle plays on defense, for sure. He's good at getting in guys' heads, but in terms of actually playing straight up solid defense, no. He's not. And then Bogdanovich is really slow, Clarkson is both small and slow, and Royce O'Neal is the only guy besides Gobert who I would say is a clear positive on defense, and he just doesn't do enough. He's a little bit undersized to guard bigger forwards. You don't really want him on point guards either. He's just a solid lineup defensive piece, but not someone who's going to carry you on defense. So instead, Rudy Gobert is doing his thing. He's taken this team to the number 11 defense in the league. He covers up for his teammates' mistakes. But at the end of the day, when you get to the playoffs, Rudy Gobert alone is not going to be able to take this defense past the Phoenix Suns or past the Golden State Warriors. When you can target 3 of the 5 players and 5 of the 7 main rotation players on this team, you're just not making the finals or winning an NBA title. I'm sorry, the defense is not good enough. So, what can the Utah Jazz do to fix this problem? Well, if you ask me, the team right now, what they really need is to just trade for a defensive player. I've seen a whole lot of rumors linking them to Robert Covington. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think Covington would be the absolute perfect player for this team. You get him shooting open 3-pointers, he fits with everybody else. He's a very good, very switchable defender. I think that would be the perfect situation. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe you get somebody else. I'm not sure. But trade for someone, maybe even 2 someones, who are good defensive players. This team has enough offense. You can afford your offense to fall off a few spaces if it means getting that defense into the top 10, and more importantly than the regular season, just getting a few versatile guys who you can put on some of the best perimeter stars in the NBA, because you do want to keep Rudy Gobert in the paint. So you need someone on the perimeter who is going to clamp dudes up, and Royce O'Neal, solid defender, not quite that guy. Meanwhile, Conley, like I said, Conley's too small, Bogdanovich is too slow, Donovan Mitchell is just not a great defender in general, same with Ingles, same with Clarkson. So I say, trade one of either Joe Ingles or Jordan Clarkson. I believe that Clarkson, for me, is the worst player, despite the fact that he's averaging more points. I think Ingles just fits with this team and their culture so freaking well. I don't want to see him traded. But whoever has more value, whoever the other teams want, trade one of them. Because you don't need 2 6-man of the year candidates. You just don't. You need one of them and turn the other one into a good defensive player to help you out. If they can do that, let's say they get Robert Covington, or a Robert Covington tiered player. I don't know if that makes the Jazz better than the Suns or the Warriors. I don't. Both of those teams are fantastic, and the Warriors are only going to get better as Steph Curry, assumingly, gets out of this frickin' shooting slump and Klay Thompson turns into his old self again. Try something. Try something, because this is basically the same lineup you had last year when you lost. It's a very similar lineup you've had the last several years when you've lost. Try something new, make a minor but still important trade, add some defense, and see if that is enough to push your team over the edge, because right now, I can't say that I see any way you beat either of those West contenders, or anyone you may meet in the finals, with your current defensive lineup on the perimeter. Make a trade, Utah Jazz, and at that point, I think that whatever the media says, because they still probably won't pay attention to Utah, nobody ever does, it's just the tragedy of existing in Utah, I think this could be a legitimate contender. 100%. The Jazz are one defensive piece away from being a legitimate title contender this season.